In the tense weeks after September 11th, 2001, America was still reeling. Airports were on high alert, security forces were bracing for another strike, and the public feared the unknown. But the next attack did not come with explosions or hijacked planes. It arrived silently, tucked into the ordinary envelopes moving through the nation's postal system. Inside these envelopes was Bacillus anthracis, anthrax, prepared as a fine powder that could be inhaled. Inhaling just a small number of spores could cause inhalational anthrax, a disease that, without rapid treatment, is often fatal. The delivery method was simple, yet devastating: regular mail. A later study revealed something chilling. In the U.S. Senate office buildings, people who never entered the rooms where contaminated letters were opened still showed immune responses to anthrax. The spores had traveled farther than expected, proving how easily an invisible threat could spread. The first sign of the attack came on October 2, 2001, when Robert Stevens, a 63-year-old photo editor for The Sun in Boca Raton, Florida, was hospitalized with severe flu-like symptoms. His condition rapidly worsened. Doctors diagnosed inhalational anthrax, a disease unseen in the U.S. for 25 years. Stevens died on October 5th. Investigators soon connected his illness to a letter sent to his workplace, one laced with anthrax spores. Over the next days, more tainted letters surfaced. Several targeted major media outlets, including NBC, ABC, CBS, and the New York Post. These early letters contained a coarse brownish powder, dangerous, but less refined than what would come later. On October 9th, two far more sophisticated letters were mailed from Trenton, New Jersey, addressed to Senators Tom Daschle and Patrick Leahy. These contained nearly a gram each of ultra-pure, highly refined white anthrax powder, so fine it could easily become airborne and infect anyone nearby. Laboratory tests identified the spores as the AIM strain, a variety used in U.S. biodefense research. Forensic work traced the genetic match to a sample kept at the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases at Fort Detrick, Maryland. Analysis suggested the spores had been prepared within the previous 2 years, meaning the perpetrator had both recent access to the strain and advanced technical skills. By the time the threat was recognized, these letters had already passed through multiple postal facilities. The fine powder escaped sealed envelopes, contaminating sorting machines and work areas. In total, 22 people were infected, 11 with inhalational anthrax and 11 with the less deadly cutaneous form, which causes skin lesions. 5 died: Robert Stevens, postal workers Thomas Morris Jr. and Joseph Kersine in Washington, D.C., hospital worker Kathleen Gwynn in New York, and Ottilie Lundgren, a 94-year-old widow in Connecticut. The impact went far beyond the confirmed cases. Across the country, mailrooms introduced gloves, masks, and new safety protocols. The U.S. Postal Service installed biohazard detection systems in major sorting centers. Hundreds of false alarms, sometimes triggered by spilled sugar or flour, resulted in building evacuations and hazardous materials responses. The FBI's investigation, codenamed Amerithrax, became one of the largest in its history, spanning 6 continents. Agents conducted over 9,000 interviews, issued more than 6,000 subpoenas, and examined thousands of environmental samples. Early suspicion focused on Dr. Stephen Hatfill, a former Army biodefense scientist. The media branded him a person of interest, but no evidence linked him to the crime. Hatfill was later exonerated and awarded a financial settlement for damage to his reputation. Attention then shifted to Bruce Ivins, a senior microbiologist at Fort Detrick who had long worked with the AIM strain. He had access to a flask, labeled RMR 1029, that contained spores genetically identical to those in the attack letters. Ivins was placed under surveillance in 2005. In 2008, shortly before he was to be charged, he died by suicide. The Justice Department declared him the sole perpetrator. Yet doubts persisted. Many scientists questioned whether Ivins could have produced the highly refined Senate letter spores alone, or without specialized equipment not available to him. Over 100 people had access to the same strain. In 2011, the National Academy of Sciences reviewed the FBI's scientific case and concluded that while the match to Ivins's flask was plausible, it was not definitive proof. Members of Congress and civil liberties groups called for deeper investigation. Meanwhile, the cleanup effort was immense. Anthrax spores can survive for decades, resisting heat, cold, and many disinfectants. The Hart Senate Office building closed for months. The Brentwood Postal Facility in Washington, D.C. remained shut for over 2 years. Decontamination required chlorine dioxide gas, formaldehyde, and other treatments, costing over $1 billion. The attacks prompted sweeping changes in U.S. biodefense policy. In 2004, Congress passed the Project BioShield Act, funding the development and stockpiling of vaccines and treatments for potential bioterror threats. The budget for the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases grew significantly to support biodefense research. Hospitals updated protocols for rare infectious diseases, and public health agencies strengthened coordination with law enforcement. Yet, even with these reforms, gaps remain. Reports years later acknowledged that the U.S. still lacks the full rapid response capability needed for large-scale biological attacks. Psychologically, the anthrax attacks left a deep mark. For weeks, Americans feared opening their own mail. A small spill of powder, even sugar from a packet, could spark panic. The incident blurred the line between public health and national security, proving that an invisible pathogen could paralyze daily life as effectively as any conventional weapon. Even today, critical questions remain. Was Bruce Ivins truly the sole attacker? Could such an event happen again, perhaps with a more contagious pathogen? What weaknesses still exist in the nation's defenses? The 2001 anthrax attacks were not the deadliest act of terrorism in U.S. history, but they were among the most insidious. They exploited the ordinary, the postal system, to bypass security and spread fear nationwide. They reshaped America's approach to biological threats, but left behind a legacy of unanswered questions. The memory of Amerithrax remains both a warning and a mystery, a reminder that in the realm of bioterrorism, vigilance never ends.